And when I shoved the door, that's when metal bent, glass broke, everything went orange.
Your airspeed's alive, your indicators are showing green. I'm in maintain 8,000 feet. 65 rotate. She's flying.
On October 8th, 2013, at 8 o'clock, a Beech S-35 airplane, November 6861 Quebec, impacted trees and terrain a half-mile from the approach end of runway 13 at Brownwood Municipal Airport, Brownwood, Texas, following a loss of engine power.
Had an A36 for 3 years and sold the airplane, and had spent a year looking for another one. And I promised my wife that I'd pay cash for the next airplane, and I located an aircraft out west of El Paso. I had a full inspection done, even looked into cylinders. Strong aircraft, great avionics, oxygen. I was excited about to have the plane. So I purchased the plane on Thursday, flew home. I was one happy camper. I flew home at almost 200 knots. I had a little tailwind. On Sunday morning, I got up after church. I took it for 10 minutes, and the third time I took off was Tuesday morning. So I had the plane 4 days. I was going to meet a man to do some instrument approaches to get back current again. I took off from Coleman, Texas, went to about 3,500 feet. It's about a 13-minute flight to Brownwood, and that was the third flight that I had in the aircraft.
The pilot stated he was making a straight-in approach to land when the accident occurred. He stated he was at an altitude of about 800 feet AGL with the landing gear down when the engine lost power. The pilot stated he didn't notice any engine roughness or unusual sounds prior to the loss of engine power. He attempted to restart the engine, but was unable to regain power.
And I called in my approach to go to runway 13 in Brownwood and started my descent. Actually, I was a little fast, so I slipped a little bit just to lose some altitude. And I was about 7 miles out straight in, and I felt a little bump in the seat, and which is normal. We all feel that, and except for this morning was super calm and cool, and I heard a little voice in the top of my head that said, "You've lost power." And at this point, I'm making full manifold pressure, full RPMs. I've already reduced my speed. The gear was down. I'm descending 500 feet a minute. And it took me about 20 seconds to realize that thought. So once I acknowledged the thought, I reached down, shoved the throttles forward, and nothing. I had nothing, no power. So I immediately went into restart mode, troubleshooting mode. I checked my gas tanks, I checked the ignition. The NTSB report said I was at 800 feet. And when I lost power, when I shoved the throttle forward and had nothing, that's when I glanced at the altimeter, and I realized I was about 800 feet off the ground, and I had about a minute and a half to get things rolling back. I'm still making full manifold pressure, still making full RPMs, engine's making noise, propellers going. I could not figure out why I didn't have power.
The pilot stated sun glare prevented him from seeing the terrain until he was about 150 feet AGL. The airplane contacted mesquite trees, cactus, and terrain and immediately erupted into flames.
You know, I mentioned it was a perfect morning and the sun, it was an October sun. The sun was so much in my eyes, I couldn't see anything. When I realized that I'd lost power, I couldn't see outside, I couldn't see anything, other options. So I decided to maintain the runway heading. And finally, when I dipped below the horizon and I could see outside, I realized I had no choice besides just to land in the trees and the cactus. I was approximately 1,000 feet short of the runway, and I knew then I was going to crash. I was probably 150 feet off of the ground. And I said out loud, I said, "Here we go." And I was talking to the Lord. And at that point in time, I just had the thought, fly the plane all the way through the crash, just fly this airplane. So I was descending at a normal rate, controlled path, and I picked a spot between the trees to come in. And right when I hit the tops of the trees, probably 20 to 25 feet off the ground, I felt the trees hit the fuselage. And at that very minute, I heard my stall warning go off, which told me that I was flying just about as slow as I could fly without just dumping it. So I picked the spot, pointed the nose between the trees, and that's when it was just bang, boom. I mean, it was the loudest noise I've ever heard. And I was prepared for the crash, but I was not prepared for the fire. So I had my safety harness on, I had a 5-point harness on, and I went to get out, and I couldn't because I had my safety belt on. So I sat back in my seat, I got undone, and I went to push the door open, and it would only come open about this far. So I got up on all fours in the passenger seat, and I shoved the door, just shoved it as hard as I could. And when I shoved the door, that's when metal bent, glass broke, everything went orange. And I crawled, that's when I just crawled out. I didn't have a wing, and I just crawled into the cactus and started exiting the aircraft.
The post-impact fire consumed the fuselage. Both main landing gears were damaged, and the nose gear was sheared off. One propeller blade was bent rearward, and the other propeller blade was straight.
The second thing I said out loud was, I've got to get out, I've got to get out. So I crawled out of the aircraft, through the cactus, and exited to the rear. And I crawled maybe halfway through the plane, and then I got up and started running. And when I got behind the aircraft, I realized that I had lost my hat, I had lost my glasses, I had a jacket on that I guess had burned off, or the cactus pulled it off. I didn't know where it went. And my shoes, it knocked my shoes off. And I remember when the impact hit, I shot forward and sideways real hard. And looking at the aircraft, I realized why I shot forward and sideways, because the left wing, when it sheared off the aircraft, it inverted and it twisted, and I landed on the tail upside down. The right wing was just tilted up against the trees, and that was the wing that was on fire so bad. So I mentioned everything went orange, and that's because I didn't catch on fire. I was just too close to the heat. I mean, seriously, it was less than 4 feet away from me. So I crawl out, I get about 50 feet behind the aircraft, and the third thing that I said out loud, I said, "Thank you, God, I'm alive." And I looked at my hands, and at that point in time, my hands, I had some skin hanging off of them where I had pressed on the door to get out, and it burnt my hands. And I had the thought, I'll play golf in about 3 weeks. I had no idea at that point that my whole head, face, arms, hands, I had no idea that I was burned as bad as I was burned. But I sat and I just watched my aircraft burning, and it was my new airplane. I just paid for it, and I started crying. And I didn't cry long, maybe 15 or 20 seconds, but I knew it was over. I knew that my wife would not buy into that any more of that aircraft activity. But as I sat there watching the plane burn and just taking note of everything, I hadn't been out of the aircraft maybe a minute, and I could hear pew, pew, pew. And that was when I realized that I had a gun in the cockpit with me that I always carried with me, and those were the rounds of my gun popping off. And I had the thought, sitting out there, I was sitting down in the pasture floor watching my plane burn, and I had the thought, man survives fiery crash and is shot with his own gun. And it made me laugh. I did. I got tickled, and I started laughing after I cried. And I counted all of those rounds, all 10 of those rounds, because, you know, it was important to me then to know that I wasn't going to get shot. What I found out later was bullets don't project like that. They just pop like firecrackers, but I didn't know that then. So I just sat back there and started pulling cactus out of my hands and pulling cactus out of my arms, and it wasn't long that I could hear the first responders trying to get to me. I could hear them coming through the pasture.
Chris, you are a living, breathing, walking, talking miracle. Talk to me about the training. You said something that really caught my attention. You said you aimed it between those trees, right? I mean, you flew it into the crash. Talk to me about your training, and how did people think, oh, I'll freak out if there's an emergency? It seemed like you turned up a notch. How does that happen?
You know, you go through scenarios when you fly. Like, what would you do if you lost power? Or what would you do if, you know, you lost a mag, or, you know, you think about things. And I would think about it on that little trip from Coleman to Brownwood. I'm only 3,000 feet off the ground. You know, there's not a lot of options. And it was ironic that it happened then, but seriously, my only thought when I realized that I lost power, my only thought was fly this plane all the way through the crash. I could hear the old timers saying it. Fly the plane all the way through the crash, and that was my only thought. So yes, I did point it between the trees. I did debate whether I should raise my gear to increase my glide ratio. I processed that thought, and then I processed, well, if the gear's down and I don't make it, it's going to cushion my fall. So I decided to keep the gear down, and I only had a minute and a half. So, you know, the emergency checklist, I didn't have time. Oh, I've lost power. I'm going to pull my emergency checklist and read through it and go through it. No, I mean, it was mental. You know, check the gas, check the ignition, check, you know. The two things that I failed to do that I did not remember was to turn on the boost pump and to unlock and open the door. And I can tell you, you could have given me 1,000 other thoughts that day, and I don't think I would have ever thought to do those two things. A minute and a half goes by fast, and I was so perplexed that I couldn't get I'm good with engine. I was good with engine management. I understand how it runs. But because I had full manifold pressure and I had full RPMs, but I didn't have power, I couldn't compute.
Right.
You know, I mean, I had all of the ingredients, but I just didn't have the results, and I was dumbfounded. So that, as far as the other training, I remember learning to fly, and I remember learning stalls, and I remember processing the thought, you know, it's important for me to know how to get out of a stall, but what's more important is knowing how to stay out, not get into it in the first place.
Yes.
I thought if I don't ever get into a stall in the first place, I don't have to worry about getting out of it. So that was my main thought. So as far as training, you know, and the minute and a half that I had, those are things that just naturally kicked in, and I didn't panic. I had a job to do, and that was to fly the aircraft.
I love that. Let's talk, because I know everyone's wondering right now, well, what really happened? Well, the NTSB says the engine was examined on the 15th of November. Evidence of a foreign material was present in the fuel pump vanes, the fuel manifold, the fuel metering unit inlet screen. The fuel metering unit screen was sent to the NTSB's material laboratory for examination, and it revealed a yellow-brown, slightly rigid material adhered to the outer surface of the fuel screen. Small amounts of the material had flown through the screen to the inner surface. The material was examined by a Fourier transformed infrared spectrometer. It's a big word, right? And the wavelength absorption spectrum matched polyester.
Yeah, it was a hard polyester type substance. And that's why I had full manifold pressure, full RPMs, because I still had fuel that had gone through the pump that hadn't been exhausted yet. And yet I just hit it in the time where I wanted more power and I didn't have it. And I didn't know about the NTSB report for a year and a half.
Wow.
And I know that 90% of all accidents are pilot error. And I was laying in ICU, burned bad, going over and over. And I remember every second of the flight. I still do. I have no trauma from it. But I could not figure out what I did to cause anything. And I can tell you that NTSB report, when I found out that it wasn't my fault, was a glorious day.
I bet. So, Chris, you are a champion in all things. You're not just a walking, talking miracle. But it's been 8 years since the crash, and I was very blessed to have the opportunity, along with Magda and your lovely wife Dot, to take you back up on your first flight since the crash in 8 years. Give me just a few sentences on what that's like, and then we'll play those clips for everybody.
I got a quick grin in first. So they surprised me, and they surprised me you surprised me going to the airport. And then when I realized that I was going to get the chance to fly, it took me, you get mentally prepared when you fly. There's things that you think about, that, you have this little mental checklist and you get ready, and I didn't have a chance to do that. So it took me a little bit to get in that mode. And then once I got in the mode, you know, and I figured out where all the new buttons were in the Cirrus, which was a blast. I mean, I loved the glass cockpit. But once I got in there and got things, I'd never flown with a stick, you know, and that was weird. And taking off was the result, you know, I was a little steep with the takeoff, the first one, because I had no grid of how the controls worked. But it was amazing. I mean, landing in St. Petersburg was totally comfortable. You know, I never even processed a thought about the crash.
Wow.
I never did. I was just right back in the vein, you know, focusing on the task at hand. Thankfully that you handled the radios for me, because that would have been a little bit busy. But as far as flying the aircraft, I loved it. Coming home was special. Coming home was at night. We were in the soup. We were all dialed in. We dropped below the clouds at 1,500 feet, and boom, there was Naples runway straight ahead, which was cool.
So just an amazing thing about Chris is he's never had fear and never worried about anything, even though we've gone through many adversities like apartment fires and things like that. When the plane crash happened, he was told that he was going to have flashbacks and nightmares and things like that. And to this day, he's never feared flying again and never had any kind of worries about flying. And I was so excited that not too long ago that we were able to surprise Chris on his 60th birthday, and he was able to get back up in the air and fly again, not because he was ever afraid or didn't want to fly, just because we haven't had the opportunity. So it was just really cool to see him living out his dreams again and getting back in the air.
MzeroA Nation, as you can tell, 2022, the Safer Pilot Challenge, I hope you'd agree it's off to a strong start already. You know, our mission here at MzeroA.com every day is to build safer, smarter pilots. And I hope through, you know, Chris's story that you all just file that away and say, you know what, next time it's time for emergency procedures, for stall procedures, whatever that may be, you're ready for them. Because our mission is when everyone else is hitting the panic button, you're calm, you're cool, you're collected, you're thinking things through, you're flying the airplane all the way to the hangar, we'll say, because that's the ultimate goal. Have a blessed, amazing, outstanding rest of your day, and most importantly, remember, the good pilot is always learning. I'll see you all tomorrow for day 2. See ya. I have a big surprise. Chris?
Yes.
With your permission, sir, I, along with the help of your lovely wife and Magda, have devised a top secret plan that we've got the Cirrus rented. It's blue, of course. It's got your name on it. I already checked the weather, it's looking good. And we are taking you, thanks to your lovely wife, as a birthday present on your first flight since the accident.
Yay, I'm putting my new shirt on. I'm excited.
So here's what's going to happen. We'll get out on the runway. Your heels are going to hit the floor. Your toes are going to move the bottom of the pedals. You'll smoothly apply full power. This has a surge and a throw to it. So you'll feel it go whoom, and like about twice. You'll also feel the throttle kind of catch there. It's totally normal. It's going to roll through. We rotate at 73. So we'll bring it back at 73. We'll get all of that set. At 200 feet, I'll kick the yaw dampener on. At 400 feet, I'll bring your flaps up. At 600 feet, I'll make the announcement, caps available, and confirm flaps up. After that, we'll go autopilot on. All right?
November 952 Sierra Bravo, turn left heading 040, runway 5 clear for takeoff.
0405, clear for takeoff. Thank you, 2 Sierra Bravo. All right, sir, let's head on out there.
And number 2 Sierra Bravo for traffic, turn left heading 020, I'll call you back on a 40.
No problem, we'll go to 020, you got it, 2 Sierra Bravo. All right, out on the runway, everybody good? All right, out on the runway, sir, give it some right pedal and some right. There you go, don't even need the right brake, really. Let's get it going straight before you give it full power. So that nose wheel's rear. Heel should hit the floor, toes the bottom of the pedals. Nose wheel's nice and straight. Smoothly apply that full power. All the way to the wall. 310 horsepower. All the way to the wall. Let's go. More. All the way. There's that last little surge. I told you my hand's right here. Your airspeed is alive. Your engine gauge are showing green on my side. Here comes, wait for 73. There it is. Baby it on back. Baby it on back. Woo! Baby it on back. She's a Ferrari. Lower that nose a little bit. Good. So fly that runway heading out for just a second. Good. You got a Ferrari in your hand.
Fine.
Good. All right, you're looking good. Yaw dampener is coming on, 200 feet. That'll help make your life a little easier. .600 feet, caps and flaps available.
All right, we'll take center when able. 101 early.
Loosen up on the death grip.
Citation has departed.
You got death grip over there. You got to break it off with your hand.
Traffic to follow, just waiting 25 miles.
Loosey-goosey.
Pushing it forward.
Doing good, don't forget you got trim to help you with your thumb. Speed's great, it's about where I want to be, about 120 this far out. And I'm just going to kind of follow you on the controls and let it be your landing. Ask for the winds. Wind check, please.
Wind 060 at 22. Hasn't been gusting as high as 30.
I understand, thanks, 2 Sierra Bravo. Just believe not winds, Chris. Welcome back after 8 years no flying. It's gusted to 30. Oh, yeah.
Is it good?
Just like home.
Yeah, we're good. It's just like home is right. I'm just following you on the controls here because it's gusty. Jeez. Speed's good. Looking good. Pick that nose up just a hair. Good. Plenty of runway. And just transition right here and hold it. Back. And then we'll get on those brakes so we don't go swimming.
2 Sierra Bravo, are you going to the FPO?
We sure are.
You can turn left at Bravo and a left on Delta and taxi all the way to this frequency.
You got it. We're going to make a little U-turn here and back on Bravo.